I'm super excited for today's live because I'm going to be inviting a very special guest to join us. A sister called Nusaibah. She is a principal of Montessori nursery called Rumi Montessori here in Malaysia. And we're going to be having a really fruitful conversation, inshallah, about parenting, about this lockdown and the last 10 days of Ramadan, because there's a lot of struggles that people are facing. So we want to be able to empower parents, inshallah, to really make the most of this last leg of Ramadan, and try to overcome some of those typical normal struggles that we face as parents, and especially being in lockdown with our children all the time as well. In terms of introducing yourself, you're probably the best person to do that. So I'm just going to leave it over to you, inshallah. If you can just tell us a bit about yourself and about your background, inshallah, just for people in this space, Quran Rehab followers who are maybe not familiar with you or your work.
Okay, well, I'm a Montessori teacher. I am actually from England, but I'm lucky that me and Halimah are both in Malaysia, so we've kind of made the same decision to be living in Malaysia. But I'm actually from London, UK, and I've been a Montessori teacher for about 17 years. And for me, education is really it's not my career, it's very much my passion. I'm very passionate about children, about how we can educate them and raise them in the right way so that, you know, we can create this future generation of people who are better than us. And that's really my passion. So all of the work that I do for Rumi Montessori, which is my school, or for any of the other Islamic Montessori stuff, is all about kind of helping and empowering all of us to work together to kind of raise this next generation of children who can, you know, truly make a difference to this world. And that's about it, really. So I only have one child, in case anyone is wondering. I just have one child. He's already 16. So I'm not like many of you who are watching this who probably have young children. But I've been there and I've done that. And I know exactly how you feel because I've experienced that as well. And so inshallah, in this talk, you know, inshallah, we can share something that can be of benefit for everyone, especially in these special nights that we have.
Yeah, alhamdulillah. And can I ask you, how long have you been in Malaysia now?
I'm coming up to 4 years now. So, and I love it. So no going back.
Alhamdulillah. What kind of triggered your move then?
Mostly looking for a better environment for my son. And when you're in England, the day-to-day way that we live, the pressure that we have, you know, the kind of like the expenses of everything kind of puts you into this auto mode that you're trying to make your living, you're trying to get by at the same time. The environment, there's so many things that you have to kind of shield your children from. And when my son got to about 12, I was recognizing that it's almost impossible to, you know, raise him in a way that gives him freedom, but at the same time, you know, it's not going to damage him and destroy him. So he was really one of the things that really pushed me to make the move to come to Malaysia. And my husband is also Malaysian, so I'm quite lucky. I'm not here as a complete foreigner. But, you know, alhamdulillah, it's, you know, when I first came here, I was amazed at how happy and positive people were, how welcome they were. And I remember just thinking, everybody's happy. This is not like going on the London Underground, you know. So alhamdulillah, lucky to be here, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I think I've shared the same kind of same reasons, and obviously my children are a lot younger, but same kind of reasons and same type of reaction and welcome that I got here as well, alhamdulillah. It's been amazing. And you mentioned that you are a Montessori teacher, but for anyone that is joining us today that maybe doesn't really know what Montessori is and doesn't understand this approach to child's education and interacting with children, could you kind of give us you know, an understanding of what it is, a better understanding?
So Montessori is basically a system of education that is seeking to develop the child's natural interest, their natural curiosity, their natural love for learning. So it's very much a child-centered approach where we focus on the child. All of the philosophy that we have in Montessori is based on the observation of how children naturally learn and develop. You know, so it's all looking at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared the child and, you know, given the child all of the tools that they need so they can learn and develop and reach their full potential. And that's what Montessori is really about. And it's very much, you know, looking at the individual talent and potential in the child and helping the child to, you know, develop that talent into a strength and at the same time develop in all other areas. And there are many similarities between Montessori and what the Prophet ﷺ has advised us and told us about raising and educating children. You have to excuse me. I have this little kitten that's on my lap that doesn't seem to want to leave me alone. So
that's so sweet.
She's kind of like trying to get to my face. So do forgive me for that. I don't have little children, but I do have a kitten that kind of does the same, you know.
MashaAllah. And what kind of, if I can ask, what kind of propelled you into this line of work? How did you become interested in the Montessori philosophy and this kind of line of work as a teacher?
Well, my mum is English, and when I was growing up, I was around a lot of converts, English converts, a lot of children from convert families. And as I came to like my teenage years, I saw a lot of children who sadly left Islam. And I remember thinking, you know, how is it possible that somebody can be raised in Islam and then when you become a teenager or an adult, you just decide to leave Islam? You know, what is it? And I remember thinking really deeply around the age of 17, 18, that there must be something that we're doing wrong from the start. Because if we are nurtured properly from the start, you know, according to how Allah has planned for us to be nurtured, then I'm sure, you know, everyone is going to have that firm belief in Allah. So that really made me start considering the role of education in the development of the human being. And then I had actually gone to Montessori as a child. So I'd seen a huge difference between Montessori education, mainstream education. And I remember that when these big questions were going around in my mind at the age of 17, 18, I remember thinking what I experienced in a Montessori school, although it wasn't Islamic, what I experienced there was something that was so beautiful. And I thought that, you know, there must be something in that can be of benefit to us. And at the time, I hadn't met a single Montessori Muslim person. I don't think it was probably like a handful in the world. I hadn't met a single like Montessori Muslim person. The Montessori school I went to was just, you know, it was the local one in our city that we were living in. And but it just, you know, I really had that sincere dua to Allah, you know, to show me. I'm not somebody who loved school, so I didn't go into education because I loved school and I wanted to be a teacher, but it was more about how can we actually educate children in the right way. And that sadness that I felt to see my own friends that I grew up with leaving Islam and thinking, gosh, you know, this can happen to anybody. What do we do as parents, as people of the community, so that we can, you know, educate and raise children in the right way so that they have this belief in Allah that lasts with them no matter what they face in the world.
Yeah, subhanAllah, that's so true. You've touched on something really important here, which was when you mentioned that, you know, from your experience, you find the Montessori philosophy and approach very much in line with the Quranic, with the prophetic type of teachings of Islam. This is something that I myself experienced as well. I absolutely fell in love with Montessori when my mum's best friend actually told me about it because she'd worked in a school. And everything she was telling me, I just found so, like you said, so much in line with the Islamic values that I fell in love with it as well. And that's what kind of pushed me on my journey. So it's something that you've mentioned. So maybe for people who are watching who don't really understand that connection because they're not familiar with Montessori, could you just give us a bit more insight into, I know you've spoken about this on some of your online courses, but maybe just give us a brief introduction to how you perceive it to be in line with the Islamic values that we have, maybe with a few examples if you could, inshallah.
So the core of the Montessori philosophy is actually to work with the fitrah of the child, the natural disposition of the child. Now, the lady who came up with this method of education, she herself was not Muslim, but she was a very devout Christian. And she says that at that time when she made all these discoveries, she was basically asking God to show her his manifestation in the child. So she was observing the child and she was, you know, she had that sincerity to want to see how Allah manifests the learning and development in the human being. And Montessori is not just for preschool. A lot of people out here will probably think that, you know, we're talking about young children. Actually, Montessori is for life. You know, the education philosophy itself goes all the way up to 18, but it's not just relevant to you and, you know, when you're a child. Many people who take Montessori training or Montessori parents evening, you find yourself that you change when you learn about Montessori education. So she was so concerned, not just about the child, but about the whole kind of development of the human being and how we can, you know, raise human beings into being these people who fulfill their purpose on the earth. one of the foundations of the Montessori method is this idea of cosmic education. And this is basically that, everything in the world is interconnected. There is a purpose behind everything in the world. We are all connected to each other. We have a purpose on this earth, and our life is to fulfill that purpose. That's kind of like the foundational philosophy behind the Montessori method. And education is a tool to prepare and support the child to grow into that individual who is going to actualize that purpose that they have. And for us as Muslims, we know that, it's very clear in the Quran. Allah tells us that our purpose on this earth is to know and to recognize Allah and to be able to see the universe as the signs that are pointing us to Him. So her, Maria Montessori, despite, not being a Muslim, she clearly saw that that's the purpose of life, to, that we have a purpose and we have to fulfill it. And, she talks a lot as well in some of her books that are a bit hard to get. She talks a lot about how, through a good education system, children will know that there is a creator, that there's one creator. And they'll begin to recognize that you have this duty, to recognize this creator and to be, one of his Khalifa on the earth. She doesn't use the word Khalifa, but, be a Khalifa on the earth. So that's the basis of the education system. And that's kind of like the message that's, that's the basis of the philosophy. So everything that we do is built on that. And those principles in themselves, they're completely prophetic. They're completely prophetic. They're completely Islamic. This is exactly what our Prophet Muhammad was telling us about all this time, that we have a purpose of life, that we have to, gain knowledge so that we can develop ourselves, so that we can fulfill our purpose of life. And that's what the Montessori education is all about. And what Montessori did for us, which we're so lucky, is that she spent all that time observing the child. She spent all that time experimenting. I don't mean in a lab. I just mean like experimenting by observing and watching the children to find out actually how do they learn and how do they develop. The legwork is there. The discoveries are there. And, I've been a Montessori teacher for 17 years. The deeper I go into the Montessori philosophy, the more and more I see the connections between what the Prophet Muhammad has said, what's written in the Quran, and what Maria Montessori has been advising us to do. And, 100 years later, there's all this research in neuroscience that's proving her work. And the reason that it's proving that her discoveries are valid is because what she was trying to look at is how Allah created the child. And of course, the way that Allah created the child is going to be 100% accurate. There's not going to be any kind of discrepancy in that. So you can just see that aspect is already makes it so much easier for us as educators, as parents, because now what we need to do is learn her method really well and make sure that we're bringing in the valuable knowledge from our Prophet Muhammad and from the Quran, so that we can ensure our children are kind of getting that well-rounded, thorough education that's going to allow them to reach their full potential and fulfill their purpose of life in this dunya, preparing them for the akhirah. So alhamdulillah, that really, really prepares us and helps us so that we can do the best that we can. And that's really one of the visions that I've had. And, a lot of people who've come onto the Montessori method, they're just blown away by how, everything, fits so beautifully within our Islamic traditions, our Islamic context and knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, I personally experienced the same. So even small things about preparing the child's environment and it being aesthetically pleasing and aesthetically simple, subhanAllah. That's why we have so many ayats in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's always talking about how everything on the earth He placed there beautifully for us and how it's all in perfect order and systemized, and subhanAllah, just very even basic things about how how Montessori, in terms of teaching how to speak to children, in terms of, being on their level and talking to them like normal human beings and things like that, subhanAllah, is very much in line to, ayat in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that, He's honored all the children of Adam. So there's so many examples as well where I've experienced the exact same thing, subhanAllah. Like you said, the more I learn, because obviously I'm not as an experienced teacher as yourself, but the more I've learned over the last 2 years, subhanAllah, again, I've just been continuously blown away. So I would definitely recommend it as, for parents to look into, even from an Islamic perspective as well, in terms of, how the prophetic teachings, how they align really beautifully with the Montessori method. Now, moving on to the next question that I wanted to ask you, inshallah. A lot of people that came into this lockdown, when this lockdown happened for COVID-19, they were already so occupied trying to entertain their children, try to keep their children preoccupied, that by the time Ramadan came along, they felt very fatigued, they felt burnt out. And subhanAllah, now that we move into the last 10 days, a lot of parents are still feeling that, that sense of feeling drained, and they really want to pick themselves up, but they're kind of struggling at the moment. So what kind of advice would you offer these parents in terms of dealing with those kind of emotions? And particularly, I think, guilt as well, because a lot of parents, they might have prepared a lot of things beforehand. And then when Ramadan came along, they didn't manage to do it. And they kind of go on social media, looking at other people and seeing what they're doing with their kids. And it's very easy to feel guilty or frustrated. What kind of advice would you give to those kind of parents, inshallah?
I mean, the first thing is that, we can only do as much as we can do. And as an individual, you can plan. Remember, Allah is going to judge you on your intentions, right? So you can plan, you can have all of these beautiful intentions, but in the end, what happens is as much as Allah has allowed to manifest to happen. So we have to remember that as well, that, maybe you feel guilty, but you have to remember that Allah is the one who's ultimately in control. He's the one who's ultimately in control of, your children, your life, this situation that we're in with COVID-19. I think everybody on this planet is realizing that we have no control, right? We have absolutely no control. We can't plan something. We can't make something happen. Everything is totally in Allah's control. And that's on the larger scale, but it's also on the smaller scale as well, right? And Allah is not going to judge us about how much we actually managed to do, but it's about the intentions that we had and what we tried. And what I recommend to parents is do your best. You put the effort in, you do your best, but you have to have gratitude for whatever it is that you've managed to do. Be grateful for the small things, even the slightest changes that you've made this Ramadan or this period of lockdown, the smallest changes that Allah has allowed you and manifested for you to make. Have gratitude and shukr for them and look at them in positive. And the things that you don't manage to do, you can always do them. There's always going to be another chance. There's always going to be another moment where you can try and do them. So you shouldn't feel completely deflated, because you still have another chance. And those changes that you wanted to make this Ramadan, but you didn't manage to do, just because Ramadan is over, it doesn't mean that we can't, bring in these beautiful Islamic elements into our life. Ramadan is like that moment of the year to restart all of us. To reconnect all of us to Allah, to make all of us change our lifestyle, change our eating habits, change everything that we have around us so that we focus more on Allah. But it's not supposed to end once Ramadan ends, right? It's supposed to be something that we continue. So all of these things that you wanted to do that you still haven't managed to do, and you see Ramadan is closely coming to an end, it shouldn't stop you from continuing them later. So first of all, just have that shukr, have that thankfulness for what you have managed to achieve, and all of those things that you plan to do for the next, that you had on your list, just keep trying and keep working towards them. And in the end, no matter how much effort you put into something, it's not going to happen, and Allah wills for it to happen. So always have inside you that dua for Allah to facilitate and to open up and to help you to achieve those goals that you have for your children. So if you look at it from that point of view, straight away you just feel elevated, right? You just feel, I can keep going, I can keep going.
That's totally right. Yeah, I think what you basically summed up everything there is to say, I think, because definitely in terms of, it's this principle of you are exactly where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for you to be, right? And, nothing, like you said, nothing happens without his willpower. And it's really about, I think something you definitely picks up on, that is really important is the fact that, Ramadan is just the starting point, right? Everyone thinks of it as this month as the beginning and end, when actually this is supposed to pump you up for the rest of the whole year, subhanAllah.
Yeah.
So to really, like you said, have that shukr, to focus on what you can take forward, inshallah. And now it's all about baby steps, right? It's all about building those habits, breaking bad habits, trying new things, seeing what works. So I definitely hope that our viewers, inshallah, are feeling motivated by that, inshallah. I also wanted to ask you, in terms of being a Muslim Montessori teacher, and moving forward, inshallah, how do you think that, you know, applying some of the Montessori approach or method or philosophy with your kids at home during this lockdown, both Ramadan and beyond Ramadan, it can really help parents to be able to make the most of their time? So I know that a big part of the Montessori method is about allowing a child to, you know, foster and to develop independence, right? So that a parent can kind of detach a little bit, they can do a bit more observation rather than always constantly trying to entertain the child. So could you just explain a bit more in terms of how adopting maybe a bit more of a Montessori approach can actually save you time in order to do things during Ramadan, inshallah, and beyond Ramadan as well?
I think one of the most important things that I really recommend that everybody starts with is to learn about the Montessori philosophy. And, you know, through the Montessori philosophy, you're going to understand your child, you're going to understand yourself, you're going to understand your role with the child. But one of the big things that's going to come and you know, point out to you during that time when you're learning about the philosophy is the importance of the preparation of the environment. And this is something that you mentioned earlier, that, you know, Allah tells us in the Quran how He prepared this universe for us, how He's put everything perfectly. You know, this universe is, you know, it was ready for us when we came here, right? So that we can fulfill our purpose. So if you take that concept and you take that philosophy to your home as a parent, and you prepare your home environment so that it is suitable for your children, so that they can be independent, so that they can learn things, so that they can do things for themselves. If you prepare your environment, you're straight away going to be giving your child a better experience, and you're going to be giving yourself an environment in which you have more ability and space to do the things that you need to do. Right? A lot of the times the parents will come to me and they'll say to me, I don't have any time. I'm always with my children. I'm always cleaning up after my children. I'm always this, I'm always that. And then I'll say to them, what does your environment look like? Send me photos. And they'll send me photos, and I'll see things like, you know, the children can't access their activities or their toys independently. You know, if a child wants water, they have to constantly ask their mum for water. You know, if the child's made a mess, they won't be able to sweep it up by themselves because there's no cleaning materials available. But if we make changes to our environment, you know, simple changes to our environment to prepare it so that our children can do things for themselves and by themselves, that straight away frees up our time, and it gives us the opportunity now to sit down, to observe our children and to interact and give that time and energy to them in a completely different way, which is going to be much more positive and much more beneficial. So you have your children at home with you now. You have no choice, right? Your children are at home. There's no choice. They're going to be with you for God knows, we don't know how many more weeks, right? Before your child can go anywhere. But actually the home environment should be the most comfortable environment for the child. It should be, you know, we shouldn't have to wait for a lockdown to begin thinking about changing our environment. You know, it should be something that we already do. One of the things that Maria Montessori said that really, really struck me is she says that, you know, you see all these animals who prepare their environments when they're going to have their young, like the bird who builds its special nest, and the butterfly who seeks a special plant to lay its eggs on those leaves. So we see all of these animals in nature who before they give birth, they put all this effort into preparing their environment, not for themselves, but for their child, right? For their offspring. They prepare the environment for their offspring so that their offspring can have that next period of their life. You know, they're in the womb and then they have this kind of like special period before they're ready to go to the big wide world. Have that special period of their life in a suitable environment for them. But she says that human beings, they don't really do that. Instead, we take this baby and we try to make them fit into our environment. But what we need to do is, you know, especially in the home, we need to prepare our home environment so that it's suitable for the child and also suitable for us. And it's not difficult. There are so many things that we can do really, really easy that will help the child to be more independent. Like, for example, you can go to one of your really like your pound stores, or in Malaysia we have the 2 ringgit stores, and you can get a little dustpan and brush and a little, you know, broom, cut the handles shorter, and just hang them on the wall. So that if your child spills something, you know, if they spill some, you know, they're playing with something and they spill, they can sweep it up themselves. You know, have a small cloth available for your child so that if they're drinking and they spill their drink, they can just get the cloth and wipe it up themselves. These things are going to help the child to be independent. They're going to help to give you more time, but it's also going to make the child feel like this is their environment as well. And when you walk into an environment that has been prepared for the child, you will see the child doing incredible, amazing things. You will see it, because actually the child is capable a lot more than what they show us. But because we don't give them that opportunity, we never get to know what the child can truly do. So my advice is, learn about the Montessori philosophy and take the first change of preparing your environment that you have. Don't go out and buy lots of stuff. Work with what you have first. Just make those small changes to your environment in these days, today, so that your child can access them, your child can be independent, and that's going to free up your time so that, inshallah, you can pray more, you can work more, you can observe your child more. That's going to be the first thing that's going to make a huge change for you and your child.
Yes, subhanAllah, even just today, I kind of saw this in practice with my son. My son is a really big mover. He loves to run around, and he's got a lot of energy, mashallah, to burn off. And I just prepared, an indoor kind of obstacle course for him, because I could see he really needed it, because we can't exactly go out to the parks and things. And subhanAllah, just observing how happy he was and how he was in his element, and he was practicing new things with the furniture in terms of how to climb. And he was telling himself, "Oh, you're doing such a great job." SubhanAllah, it was so amazing to see. And not just for the child's confidence, but even for myself, I was able to then sit back, obviously observe him, but able to sit there and do some dhikr, able to sit there and read a little bit of Quran. So it definitely frees it up. And I think it also allows them, when they're so focused on something and so interested and fascinated by what they're doing and absorbed, as well, it allows you to slip out as a mom and maybe dad to come in, and to do the observation. So you could go and do that 2 rakahs or whatnot. So I think that's invaluable advice. Jazakallah khairan for that. Okay, so the next question I have for you is, in terms of people at the moment who maybe are new to Montessori, so they don't have very much time on their hands right now at the end of Ramadan to kind of go into it. And obviously you've advised to read into it, because it is a philosophy that needs to be understood correctly to apply it. But maybe if they don't have too much time, is there any websites that you might recommend, or any YouTube channels even that might be able to teach them, simple things about Montessori, or Instagram accounts, anything that you think might be a good resource as a starting point for anyone?
I mean, if you look on Google or Instagram and you put in Montessori, you're going to be overwhelmed and bombarded by lots and lots of different things out there. And it's difficult if you're new to Montessori to know actually which one is going to be actually Montessori and which one is just somebody's own interpretation of it. On my Instagram account, I have some videos where I talk about which books you can buy, and some of the basic philosophies that you can begin to implement with your children. And if you order those books, there are specific Montessori books. If you order them, those will give you that really good first introduction to what Montessori is. One of them is Raising an Amazing Child the Montessori Way, which is a book by Tim Selden. I love that book for parents because it just has a really beautiful way that it puts the Montessori philosophy, and it's very practical that you can kind of get started with it straight away. So you can actually buy that now online as an ebook, and you can just take a glance through and get started. But another thing is to also look at what other parents have done, especially the ones who are Muslim following the Montessori method. Look at what they've done in their home, the changes that they've made. I have shared some examples on my Instagram, but there are loads of other sisters that are sharing their examples of the changes that they've made in their environment to make it suitable for the child. So I mean, I think that's probably the best way to get started if you want to get started right now. But I do really, really recommend going to the sources, getting the books. I do have an online course, which you took, Halimah, right? And there's a lot of other people who have taken that course. And, that's just to help you kind of learn about the Montessori philosophy. Those are the ways that I recommend that you get started. But don't take this as a pressure that you have to know everything and you have to get started right now. I mean, even if you just come off of this video and you just look at your child and think, okay, they spoke about putting a dustpan and brush and a cloth. Okay, I'm just going to make those changes. Even if you just make those changes, that's the one step towards that ultimate goal. Don't make it that you pressurize yourself, because I see a lot of parents, they will start to stress themselves out. And that's not what we want to do right now. We don't want you to be stressed out. We just want you to enjoy the transformation of, working according to your child's fitra, So just take it.
about enjoying the journey as much as the destination, right? Because the kids, they can really feel your emotions. They absorb it, don't they?
Yeah, exactly. Enjoy this process of making the change. And sometimes when you make those little changes one by one, you get to enjoy each and every one of them. And then you get to know the impact each one has had. And then you can share it with other people. Like you said about the obstacle course that you made for your son. You know, you made one change, you really see the difference. Now you can really share that with others. So, you know, take those small steps. You don't have to do everything right now. Just take those small steps. And because we're in the last 10 days of Ramadan, just the small changes that you can do that will allow you to have more time to pray or more time to do dhikr. Those are the things that are the most important right now.
Yeah, and it just reminds us, when you're saying about, taking that first step, that nothing in Islam, that's what's so beautiful about Islam, right? Is that nothing is insignificant, subhanAllah. And when you said that to me, it just reminded me of the hadith where, we find that, the Prophet ﷺ said that if the day of judgment is, the trumpet has been blown and you have a seed in your hand, then plant it in the earth, subhanAllah. When you know that there's nothing going to come of that, right? There's no tree that's going to grow, no fruits are going to be fed to people. This is the day of judgment started, but it's about, having that sincere intention to do good, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you for that and put barakah in what you do as well. So definitely, I completely agree with what you're saying about, taking those baby steps and things definitely growing as well. In terms of really ramping up our ibadah in these last 10 nights now, a lot of parents, they want to do that, but they still kind of struggle with the whole juggling act, because even if they've put certain, they're following the Montessori method and they're kind of preparing the environment, setting things up that they can do for their child, at the end of the day, your children are still dependent on you, right? You still need to feed them, they still need some change, obviously according to the age of your child, they still need you to prepare that environment, etc. So if there are some parents who are still feeling that tug in terms of balancing things, what kind of advice would you give them?
The first thing is that I want you to know that whatever it is that you're doing for your child, whether it's feeding them or bathing them or cleaning the house, cleaning the mess up after them, whatever it is that you're doing for your child, if your intention is for Allah, that is ibadah, right? So don't think that that time that you spend with your child is taking you away from your ibadah in Ramadan. Make the intention that this is your ibadah. This is your ibadah. So all those hours that you spend with your child, this is your ibadah. And then after that, the other time that you do have where you're not with you're not doing those direct things and you're planning to pray and read Quran and stuff, do it with your child. Do it together with your child. One of the things that is lacking is that there's been generations of children who've been raised in families where, the Ramadan has happened at nighttime when the doors close and the children don't know what's going on. And then those children grow up and they don't really have that same feeling and love for Ramadan because their parents did it when the children were asleep or when the children were watching television or when the children were quiet. My advice is do it with your child. This Ramadan is all about all of you focusing on Allah, and your children are included in that. So sit with your child and read Quran with them. Even if then they can't read, just let them play with their toy and you read Quran with them. You read Quran there in front of you. Pray with your child. If they don't want to pray or they're too young to pray, just let them feel that they're praying, even with their play is prayer. Let them feel the environment of it. Put your prayer mat out and put their prayer mat out and put their blocks on their prayer mat, but let them feel that you're doing this together. Because you have to remember that, when you get married and you become a parent and you have a family, this is no longer about you and Allah. This is about you all and Allah, right? So you have to build that connection and that relationship with your children of connecting to Allah together. And this is going to be one of the big factors that's going to, help your child in their life later on. When your child becomes an adult and they think of Ramadan, you want them to think of those most beautiful, lovely moments where you were sitting beside them, reciting Quran, and they were playing with their Lego, right? You want them to think of those moments, or the moments where you prayed Taraweeh, and between each Taraweeh, you read a little story to them. You want them to remember those beautiful moments so that becomes a anchor that pulls them back to Allah throughout their life. Whereas if you kind of have this idea to separate yourself and to keep your children occupied so that you can slip into another room and pray, then in a way you might be doing what's nice for you, but it's not our true purpose, because our true purpose as parents is also for us to bring our children with us, right? You know, that's what I recommend. You know, take the time that you can now with your children next to you, involve them as much as possible. Don't put yourself, you know, this target that you have to do your whole, you know, 20 rakat of tarawih or however many rakats tarawih do. Don't put this, you have to do this, and, you know, my children are getting in the way. Just do what you can. Make your intention to do a maximum, but enjoy every single bit that you've done. Because in the end, Allah's going to write it all for you. If your intention is pure, He's going to write it all for you. It's not about you saying, I read the whole Quran, but it's about how much you read with that positivity and that shukr that you have to Allah, and how your children were involved in it. That's what's going to make the huge difference. And as somebody who has a 16-year-old son, I'm telling you, these years go really quickly. You know? And once they're gone, and you can't get them back again. You know, so enjoy this Ramadan with your little people. You're so special that Allah has given you these amazing, incredible, pure beings to accompany you in this Ramadan. So enjoy it and do the best you can, and have that shukr to Allah that He's put you in this position. Don't see it as an obstacle, but see this as a blessing that you have this Ramadan. You have the blessing of enjoying Ramadan with your children.
I think that's the perfect kind of advice, because subhanAllah, so often we see this, right, where people, there's no dichotomy in Islam between that which is secular and that which is spiritual. And I say this all the time to my community, you know, subhanAllah, and that includes, you know, your family life as well as your ibadah. They are all part of it. That's why when we say Islam is a way of life, it literally is a way of life, right? It takes everything, how you interact with your spouse, your kids, how you go to sleep, how you go to the toilet, everything, subhanAllah. And that's because it's a complete system, right? And again, like you said, it just comes down to your intention. It comes down to the purity of your actions according to the sunnah. And, you know, a lot of people, they don't realize as well that our relationship with the Quran, because obviously Ramadan is all about our relationship with the Quran and renewing that to renew our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And a lot of people don't realize that if your Quran relationship is not evolving along with your life, you're going to have that disconnection. A lot of people say, you know, the Quran is not relevant to my life, or I don't feel a personal connection. It's because you're not allowing it to evolve, right? You're just doing what you always do every Ramadan since you were 2 years old, and that's why you feel that disconnection. So for a lot of people, they don't know, but one of my Ramadan goals this year was not to memorize a certain specific portion of the Quran or to read a certain chunk of it, or mine was purely to do a parental analysis of the Quran, because that's where I am at my life right now. You know, I'm at a time where I have got my 2 very small children, and I want to do the best with this blessing that I have. So I decided, well, you know, the Quran is a complete guide. If I truly believe that, then let me approach the Quran, studying it from a perspective of a parent, how I can be the best possible parent, you know, that I can. Because at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, almost half of the Quran is just full of stories of the past, right? Of prophets and righteous people. And they're called ahsan al-qasas. They're called the best of stories because they deal with the best of creation, people who we're supposed to take as role models. So if we look at them, we can find amazing parenting tips, right? And subhanAllah, what I found in Nusaibah has been absolutely mind-blowing, subhanAllah. Even to the simple things of, you know, when you look at Yusuf alayhi salam, when he goes to approach his father to tell him this dream, right? That might seem so insignificant, you know, a child coming to tell you what they're dreaming of. But when you look at how his father received him, how his father spoke to him, how you know, the love that they shared between each other, just, you know, explained through the language, subhanAllah, you realize that, well, you know what, when I wake up after suhoor and, you know, my children have woken up and they're coming to me, the way that I'm going to receive them, the way that I'm going to talk to them, even about, you know, a dirty nappy or about a dream they had or whatnot, the way that I speak and treat and engage with my child is actually living the tafsir of the Quran. So not just reading it, subhanAllah, but you're living the tafsir of the Quran. And that is far more important, to actually be implementing the Quran in our life, right? So subhanAllah, I completely agree with what you're saying. This is all part of our ibadah. And again, when you mentioned about shukr, I think that is so important for people to remember, because at the end of the day, you know, when we say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, we have to realize that we're talking about our very bodies, right? So what about our children, who are just an extension of our rizq, right? So they belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they've just been given to us for a short period of time. One day we're going to have to depart from them, either they from us or us from them. So it's really about cherishing those moments. And like you said, even when I look back at my own childhood and upbringing, subhanAllah, I have memories of Ramadan and about my dad reading Quran and my mom engaging with it. So these are things you definitely will instill, and definitely I agree with you, parents shouldn't overlook that children actually remember these things, subhanAllah.
Exactly.
So Jazakallahu khairan for that. It's a very touching reminder. Now I want to ask you, as a trainer myself, somebody who teaches and trains, I know that one of the best ways of learning is through teaching itself, right? So a lot of things we can learn from our role as a teacher, or even as a parent from our children, we learn a lot, subhanAllah. So if I was to ask you, in your own personal life, with your own child, or teaching now, mashallah, for over 17 years, what's kind of like, is there been any special advice that's given to you that's really stuck with you in your parenting, or any specific incident that's happened either with your own child or teaching that's really stuck in your memory that helped you in terms of, bringing up your own child and engaging with children in your school?
With my own child, he actually has autism. So Allah gifted me with a special kind of a child.
MashaAllah.
And one of the best advices that was given to me is to see this as there's something in this that Allah wants you to learn, right? And subhanAllah, I have learned so much from raising a child like that, because your children actually teach you. I truly believe that Allah selects every one of our children, giving us exactly the child we need to help us learn a certain lesson that we need in our life. And, these children are, in a way, our teachers. Yes, we see ourselves as teachers, but they are our teachers. They are also sent to teach us something about ourselves that we need to know. Those of you who are parents, I'm sure that you have seen that you transformed after having children. That transformation is probably something you could never do before you had your children. And with each new child you have, there's a new transformation that takes place. So see every single child, every single moment, every single interaction as an opportunity for you to learn something. There's something in there that you can learn. Outwardly, when you look at your child, yes, it's your child, but spiritually, this is Allah moving your child. Our children are the most ones in the family who are connected to Allah. They're connected to Allah more than we are. So they moved by Allah, it's Allah who moves them. So, when you see the manifestation that takes place in your child, know that Allah is talking to you. He's telling you something. He's teaching you something. And read that sign. If you take your children like that as teachers that are going to, help you to become a better person, then every single moment of your journey as a parent, especially in this lockdown, every single moment is going to be a transformation to a better person that you can be. And that's really the biggest thing that has impacted me on my journey as a parent and my journey as a teacher. And every once in a while, I'll get this new child in my classroom or in my school who's going to teach me something completely new. And for me, it's so exciting because there's never an end to what Allah can teach you through your work with children.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful to think in that way and to ask ourselves. I guess if we don't ask ourselves the question of, what every day, what is this, if we're facing a struggle or we have a blessing or whatever it is, asking ourselves, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaching me through this? I guess that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is continuously telling us in the Quran to reflect, to be people of reflection, to think and to do tadabbur, subhanAllah. So I think that's an amazing piece of advice. In terms of now, inshallah, we're gonna come to the end of this live, even though I don't want to, subhanAllah, such a beautiful thing we're having. I just wanted to ask you, in terms of any parting advice for any parents during this lockdown with their kids and during this last 10 days of Ramadan, is there anything that maybe we haven't touched on that you'd like to, as a parting gift, like to share with our audience today, inshallah?
What I'd like to share is you have to, as a Muslim, believe that your child is being nurtured by Allah. And Allah has put in your child and in every human being the capacity to be something amazing. And just like Allah prepared the environment, for us to be able to live, to be able to the weather's perfect for us and there's food for us to eat. He's also prepared our world, the environment, as a perfect place for us to learn, right? So when you look at your child, know that Allah is nurturing both you and your child, and you have to trust in Him. You don't have to look at all of these external, philosophies from all these, different people who, don't have, a lot of them are atheists, a lot of them don't have a proper religion. You don't have to look at all of their philosophies and ideas about how to parent, how to raise children, how to do all that. You know, Allah's already guided us, and he's already helped us and showed us through the Quran and through the Sunnah. You know, he's already given us. So, you know, my advice is trust Allah and trust your Prophet. But raising and educating your parents is something that they know, and they have taught us more than anybody else. You know, go back to the Quran, go back to the Sunnah, go back to the words of our beloved prophets, and you will see in there everything that we need as parents, you know, and what we will learn from them is going to always be, you know, superior to the knowledge that we can get outside if we look at, you know, just random philosophers and that, you know, there's all of these new parenting books that are coming out, right? All of these new, you know, different theories. Yeah, there's so much coming out, and you won't know which one is right and which one is wrong. And the only way that you can know whether something is going to be right and suitable for you to invest in educating your children with that is if you go back to seeing whether it matches with the Quran and Sunnah. And that's why the Montessori method, you know, that's what we've done. We've taken the Montessori method, we've looked at it in depths, to the core, to the skeleton of the Montessori method. We've looked at it, and it matches with what the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is telling us. There isn't anything that I see that is different. And I have this debate with many people, you know, people who might say to me, oh, you know, you're a Montessorian, you're blinded, and they might ask, you know, try and throw something at me, and then I'll show them how actually, no, it does fit with Islam. It does fit with the Prophet. And, you know, it's not about saying Montessori's, you know, this is the best, be a Montessorian. No, it's about saying, follow the example of your Prophet, follow the, you know, what Allah has told us in the Quran, and you can use Montessori as a way to help you do that. You know, that's my advice to everybody, because this responsibility that we have as parents and as educators is such an important responsibility. We're not just impacting the child today, but we're influencing who they're going to become in the future. So we have the opportunity to change the future for Islam. We have the opportunity to create better Muslims, to create a better ummah. And we're at a time right now where the world needs that. The world needs, you know, these people who have this strong belief in Allah, but are also academically brilliant and are also emotionally brilliant and have all of the other, you know, aspects of them developed well. The world needs it now more than anything. So we can make that change as parents. And the way that we do that is go back to the Quran, go back to the Sunnah. You'll see everything that you need to know about your child is there. It's already there. You know, it's impossible. Allah created mankind and gave the final prophet and didn't give us our instructions for what to do with children. It's there. It's just we haven't paid enough attention to it because we're looking outside. So look now back inside. Look at what Allah has already given us, and look at your child. If you observe your child with sincerity, they will show you what you need to do.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, that's just the philosophy here at Quran Rehab. It's the fact that, you know, there's no one that can better coach you to success than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? He's the one that created you. He knows you. He's defined success in the actual true form. And he's the best person to guide you to that, right? SubhanAllah, you teach yourself the Quran will teach you everything. So I completely agree with that. And Jazakallah khairan for that. And I just wanted to end here, inshallah, by asking you to share with our audience how they can learn more about you, about your school, your online courses, where they can find all this information and how they can follow you, inshallah, because I will definitely advocate on your behalf, mashallah, tabarakallah. I have taken a few of Sister Nusaibah's courses, and I have to be honest with you, I've actually taken secular kind of courses where, you know, it's just been purely Montessori, and there've been hundreds of pounds worth, subhanAllah, with certain people. And I'll tell you, I actually found your courses far more effective in terms of even explaining things a lot more clearly from a Montessori perspective. I love the fact that you've included the Islamic perspective in it, and it's a far more simple breakdown, but again, much more comprehensive as well. So I definitely vouch for your courses, inshallah. I love your page. I follow them. I follow you, both your pages, your Islamic Montessori and your, you know, Rumi Montessori. So please do tell our viewers, inshallah, where they can find your work, your website and everything.
Well, I'm the most active on my Instagram account, Rumi Montessori, but I do have a second one, Islamic Montessori, which is more specifically to the Islamic content. And, you know, I have a website, Rumi Montessori, Facebook page, you know, the usual. You can, but, you know, the best thing is contact me through Instagram. You know, that most of the information will be there on the Rumi Montessori Instagram page. And if you don't have Instagram, you can go through the website, Rumi Montessori. So that's actually the name of my school. And we're actually in the process of launching something new. under Islamic Montessori. So inshallah, if you follow that and be ready for that, inshallah, you'll see that something amazing, inshallah, that will be announced there in due course. But everyone is welcome to message me personally as well, like on my Instagram. Every day I get new messages from different people all over the world asking different questions. I love to be part of that journey, and I love to know that there's some child in some country that's having some change made to their life, and that I could be part of that. Alhamdulillah, I feel very grateful and happy to be part of that. So, you can connect with me in any of those ways.
Jazakallah khair, Nusaibah. Thank you so much
Halimah.
for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
This interview has been full of a lot of wisdom, alhamdulillah, that I hope parents will feel empowered for going forward, inshallah, for the last 10 days and beyond. And inshallah, they'll find a lot of practical tools and tips, as well as some mindset mindset techniques as well, inshallah. So jazakallah khairan for that.